Great. Well, thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to just briefly present the results of the little survey we did. And also thank you very much for everyone who took the time to take the survey. I think this sort of exchange of information is an important part of community building at a time when it is more important than ever to build communities. So let's see if I can advance this slide. There we go. So the theme of our survey was how have talent management leaders adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic, and how will this change talent management? And the reason that the things we'd like to cover in this talk are our motivation for doing this research in the first place, some key insights that we think we found, a little bit about the survey demographics so we can know who is giving us this information, quickly go through the survey results, and look at some recommendations that we felt came out of this work. So, the motivation here is, I think we all understand that COVID-19 put unique stresses on HR and talent management. And not just on the function, but also on each of us as individuals. And, we really are part of a community, and it's important at this time to reach out to other members in our community and see how they're doing, see how we can support each other, see how different people are adapting and coping. So those are really the things that we wanted to understand here. And we're hoping that by doing this survey and some of the conversations it sparked, we've helped to bring a little bit more connection to a community under a lot of stress. So what are the key insights that we found? So, we got a little bit under 100 responses to the survey. So this is not by any means an authoritative set of data. But we did run it through our clustering engine, and a little bit more on that later. But we found that there were two quite clear groups. There was a group of people, a little bit less than half, who really felt that things would return to normal, and that the new normal would not be that different from the past. But there was another group, and this was a slight majority, who were really expecting to see fundamental change. They did not think that things would ever go back to normal for them or for their organization. Short term, there wasn't that much difference between these two clusters. Everyone is really very much focused on supporting their current workforce, on working from home and making sure that people were healthy, were safe, and were engaged. Long term, though, there were some quite clear differences between the two clusters. So cluster one, the group of people who felt things would return to normal, felt long term that their main role would be to help people stay focused and to build foundational skills. And foundational skills are those skills that people use to build new skills. They're sometimes referred to as enduring skills. The second cluster were less certain. They were really very much more focused on preparing for change and had a lot less certainty as to what that meant, which I suppose is normal. And in both cases, they felt there would be a need to really enable and ensure internal talent mobility. And what this means is the ability of people in an organization to change, not just to change jobs, but to change career paths and to move into adjacent areas, so that the way that work would be much more flexible for these people. So before we dive in, this survey was taken between April 27th and May 18th. So really, at the height of the pandemic for many of us. In terms of the roles of the people that responded, The largest number were people in executive or board leadership positions. Then that was followed by people in HR and talent management, learning and development, operations leadership, and design leadership. And so this may surprise some of you that design leadership was such a large percentage, but I think that really just reflects IBICA's community. IBICA is very active in the global design thinking community, and as a result, many of the people who respond to our surveys are members of that community. In terms of what sector people were in, the largest sector was education, but there were people from many other areas, from finance, from healthcare and pharmaceuticals, from telecommunications and technology, and a wide range of people who identify themselves as other. In terms of scale, again, the scale was from the very small, from the 1 to 5 person companies, to the very large, to the 100,000 plus person companies, with the largest number being between sort of 50 and 5,000, which is, you know, fairly representative of the American economy itself. Yes, the largest number of companies are in the sort of 1 to 20 range, but they do not tend to invest as much in learning and training directly. Most people were from Canada and the United States. There was good representation from the European Union and the UK, and a fairly decent number of people from India. And again, we find this is a fairly typical distribution. That we, you know, the majority of people responding to our surveys are from Canada and the United States. There's also good representation from the EU and the UK. And India kind of punches above its weight in terms of the number of people engaged. Same thing is true in the design thinking community. It's a 140,000 person community, and there are about 30,000 people from India in it, which is perhaps more than one might have expected. So in terms of the survey results, so as I said in the introduction, we found 2 clusters. So the way that we find these 2 clusters is we run a clustering algorithm known as Louvain across the data. And the way Louvain works is it tries to find the most densely connected. So it optimizes for dense connections between responses. And also it tries to minimize, you know, the cross-cluster relationships. Louvain is a very powerful algorithm that can be used in many places for understanding networked data. So as we said, about 45% of people felt that the economy and their work situation is going to be up and down, but would eventually return to normal. And eventually generally meant, you know, over about the next 12 months. The people who were expecting fundamental change were really expecting change. They felt that their current business models would not survive. They would need new business models, and with that would come different customers and different ways of doing work. In terms of current focus, you know, the people who expected things to return to normal were very much focused on just making sure that people could work effectively from home, that they, you know, were concerned with people's health and safety and focus, just making sure that this transition to working at home was actually working for people. And this is very similar to our own experience, where we found that the first couple of weeks, especially with the younger staff, we had to overinvest in helping people feel comfortable, stay focused, and stay connected. The fundamental change group, the patterns weren't as clear. There wasn't a huge differentiation between these 2 groups on, you know, at this level. And there was just, you know, I think there's a lot of fear and uncertainty among people in the fundamental change, some of the people in the fundamental change group. And that is making it more difficult for them to act in the short term until they see what patterns may emerge. In terms of how people see this playing out going forward, there's going to be a continued focus on collaboration and making sure basic needs are being met. Ongoing work on helping people stay focused and on helping people take their foundational skills and apply them to succeeding in the new working environments that they're in. Over on the group that were thinking they would experience fundamental change, the conversation was much more around resilience. You know, what were they going to need to survive through the next 12 months to 36 months? What kind of skills would they need to adapt? And sort of a lot of questions as to about what these new skills might be. So every time you do one of these surveys, you realize afterwards that there were questions that you should have asked that you didn't. And the comments are usually the most richly rewarding part of the survey. So we realized after we started to get the survey data back that we should have been asking people about how well they themselves were coping. We should have asked people about their families and their communities. But we could pull some of this out of the data. And you know, one of the you know, most people seem to be coping fairly well, and a lot of people were enjoying having more time at home, especially those who were with family. But people who were not with family, especially people who lived alone, were suffering far more from isolation and uncertainty. You know, we didn't probe into communities outside of the work community. We should have, but we didn't, and we didn't really get a lot of insights there. In subsequent research that we're doing and in interviews we're conducting, it turns out that the local community that people are in, not their work community or their educational community, but their local neighborhood and city and state, had a huge impact on how they perceived the experience of going through the pandemic. And that is, you know, I think sometimes we forget, especially in a world where there's a lot of virtual work, that our community really matters. And our community is an enormous source of both support and learning. And having community connections helps in situations like the pandemic. We didn't probe on how well people's organizations were supporting them. I suppose it's obvious that we should have. But this came up quite a bit in the comments. And most people felt that their organizations were doing a good job of supporting them, that they were being kept well informed and were pretty comfortable with the role that their organizations were playing for them. But there were about 20% of people, or about 20% of the comments, because of course, not everyone commented on this, where the comments got quite dark. And there is at least a smaller group of people who really think that they're being taken advantage of and very poorly supported by their institutions and organizations. And interestingly, when we filtered this, we found that the vast majority of these people were working in the education sector. This surprised me. I don't know if it will surprise you, but it was a surprise to me, and I think it's something that is worth further conversation and investigation. Just to go through this a bit faster then, so the skills that people were using to adapt were primarily around adaptability, resilience, empathy, and patience, using online skills and critical thinking. And the skills that teams were using were not surprisingly collaboration and remote collaboration. There was much more mention of specific tools, with the Zoom coming up most often, and relationship building. That relationship building and relationship management were very, very important, you know, to people as they tried to adapt. Again, current focus, we've spoken about this. I want to leave a little bit of time for discussion, so we'll go through, we'll skip that. Priorities for the network going forward, building on new collaborative ways of working. We've all learned a lot about how to collaborate, and now is a great opportunity to build on that. People wanted to ensure that those around them, those people that they work with, are safe and are focused, and on how to become more adaptive and resilient. So I'm going to, to just skip forward to what needs to change there. So we asked what needs to change in HR and talent management. And the conversations here were again, very much fell into three groups. One is that HR needs to become more strategic. It needs to become more essential. It needs to become more human and show human values, was one group, probably about 60%. But there was another group that said, HR can't change. HR is homeostatic. It's not strategic. It's not and never will be a strategic function within the organization. And then there was another group who, again, there's too much flux. It's too early to tell. So our recommendations from this are, first of all, people have to come first. And at this point in time, that means safety, making sure people are safe, building trust, making sure that they're engaged and they're focused. And if this is not your number one priority, you probably will not succeed in any other priorities you may have. Secondly, is that this is a unique opportunity to invest in collaboration, to understand it better, to support it, to see how we become more collaborative, not just in the sense of virtual work, but really learning how to work better together. And that we need to learn more about how to design for both resilience and adaptation. And that's a large topic, which I am sure that is being explored in many parts of this conference. So I'd like to stop there and turn the talking stick over.
All right, thanks so much, Stephen. No, thanks for sharing the results, and it's interesting. I was interested. Interesting the number of people that thought things would go back to normal, and that I thought that was a higher percentage than expected. I don't know that especially given the timing of the survey, as opposed to being something different. I want to thank you that we don't have, unfortunately, time for questions. It's kind of a short slot. I very much appreciate your sharing the results with us, and it was great having you. So thanks once again, and we're going to move on. I think our next presenter is kind of just going to be queued up. So thanks again, Stephen. It's great to have you here. And
appreciate it.
all right. Thanks once again.